One of my favorite arguments in tabletop space is battle maps or theater of the mind. One of them gives you a ton of creative agency and dynamic, fast-flowing battles. The other one gives you tactical and gritty combat and by the rules action. Now let's talk about battle maps. What am I talking about when I say battle map? I'm talking about any 2 or 3D representation of the space that the encounter is taking place in. This can be anything from a simple sheet of paper all the way up to a fully customized 3D printed set piece. What you're doing is you're giving yourself a way to measure, is the most important aspect of the battle map, and a way to keep track of things. There are The biggest con when you're talking about battle maps is the time. They take a ton of time. Doesn't matter if it's the simple dry erase ones or your super complicated set pieces. They are a prep time sink. The next con about battle maps is if you're not careful, they can really easily take your players out of the game. And this generally happens in 2 ways. The first is if you've got a big, cool set piece set up and ready to go, your players are probably going to be paying more attention to that than what's happening at the table before that comes into play. The second way that battle maps can break your players out of the fiction is constantly changing maps. There's no way to do that and stay in fiction. Another hidden thing that you kind of have to watch out for when you're using battle maps is managing expectations. If you start off with full 3D printed custom maps for every session, your players are going to get used to that and expect that, but you're putting a massive workload on yourself. So you've got to be really careful to manage those expectations and not put a ton of work on yourself. Now that I've talked about the things I don't like about battle maps, let's get into the pros, the things I do like about battle maps. First, they give your players something to engage with, something to touch and hold and use and feel. That's going to help keep them in the game so much better. Second is it makes it a lot easier to keep track of what is going on, especially in big combats where there's a lot of actors on the field. Having that representation, that token, makes a huge difference in making it easy for the GM to keep track of what's going on. Are also really good for putting things into perspective and helping players understand range and distance and how far away things are. I like them for line of sight. They're great for using that. You can also use them to really up the tension of a session. I said earlier you have to be careful about using them frequently, but if you use them infrequently, it's a really great way to make a session memorable, to signal to your players that it's going to be an important session, and honestly, it's a fun chance for everyone to play with toys while they're playing D&D. Doesn't get better than that. One more great thing about using a battle map is if you are very much into playing rules as written and you want chunky, mechanical, numerically dense combat, having the map, having that gridded out map is a must, because that's going to give you those by the book lines of sight. That's going to give you your rules as written gameplay. So if that's important to you, a battle map is a must for you. Alright, now let's talk about Theater of the Mind. Theater of the Mind is a playstyle that doesn't use any props or maps, and instead you describe the scene and the setting and the action that's taking place there. This can be anything from a simple, I walk up the stairs and stab the guy, to a full-blown cinematic description. I leap over the table and land behind the orc. My dagger flashes in the moonlight as it finds purchase between his ribs. There's going to be about as many different Theater of the Mind playstyles as there are people out there. So this is a really great chance for you to inject your personality into your playstyle. Couple of things about it just to know, not pros or cons, just things to know. Some people have a hard time visualizing things, so this playstyle might not be the best for those folks. and it does require everybody at the table to put in a little more work to keep track of what's going on. I'll talk about the things I do like about Theater of the Mind in a minute, but right now I want to talk about some of the drawbacks to this playstyle. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that you can't really be very accurate with this playstyle, so that makes it really hard to follow rules as written, because you don't have those tokens in those measured spaces. It's I walk up to the guy. Another thing that makes it hard is that it does put a lot of work on everybody at the table to lean into that combat roleplay. Now, if combat roleplay isn't a skill you've worked on, I did a little video on that, on how you can beef that skill up. I'll put the link for that down in the description below. But Theater of the Mind does require everybody at the table to do at least a little bit of combat roleplay, so that could be seen as a con for sure. There are a lot of moving parts in any game, and not having a physical representation of those is going to make it harder to keep track of. So it's going to be harder to keep track of everything that's happening, especially in a big or complicated battle. Another drawback to Theater of the Mind is the weight of the moment is going to depend on everybody's ability to roleplay that moment. So if somebody's not leaning in or having a hard time with playing their character, it can undermine that. Despite the drawbacks, Theater of the Mind still has a lot going for it. I think the single best thing it has going for it is it gives your players more agency. I am a firm believer in player agency. The more agency a player has, the more fun they're going to have, the more engaged they're going to be, the more fun everybody at the table is going to have. Now, in addition to giving your players more agency, Theater of the Mind is also a fantastic creative outlet. It's a really great way to have fun with what your character's doing. Another thing I like about it is it's a great way to inject personality into your character, to show your table how your character does what they're so good at. And I love it for that. Another thing about it that I think is a big pro is it tends to go faster. You're not measuring, you're not counting squares, you're not triple checking rules, so the game is gonna flow a heck of a lot better. And for me, because of all of those things, another huge pro is Theater of the Mind is just more fun for me. Alright, well now I've talked about the good and the bad of Theater of the Mind and battle maps. I like them both. I think they both have their place and they both do what they do very well. My personal favorite approach is the hybrid approach. I like to use the battle map as a tracker, just a way to keep track of where everybody is, what ranges are, how far people can move, all the things you use it for, but that's where that stops. It's just a tracker, and then all of the actual action, all of the exciting and interesting stuff happens in Theater of the Mind. Everybody at the table will lean in and describe what's going on. And so you get this hybrid where you're able to stick close to the rules and have that tactical, gritty combat by using the map as a tracker, but you're also able to have that creative freedom and that joyful expression of your character through Theater of the Mind. So I really think the hybrid approach is the best way to go. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think about battle maps versus Theater of the Mind, what you like, what you don't like. And then if you want to see what I'm talking about with the hybrid approach, check out Chapter 1 of our Cyberpunk Red campaign right there. And if you want to get more gaming tips from me, check out this playlist right here. And don't forget to subscribe. As always, thanks a bunch, and I'll see you next week.